The fall crafting event has begun in War Thunder, and once again, an American AGS prototype is one of the rewards. I was watching a similar video by another creator, Spookston, about the topic, and he had a lot to say about the event. I'll link it down below so you can watch for yourselves, but his gripe was with the rewards themselves, citing how Gaijin almost always gives out the same sorts of vehicles for each nation. Soviets get heavy tank prototypes, America gets a light tank. This comes at the cost of tech tree diversity, where gaps aren't accessible to most players and have to be filled in by events, which isn't a good strategy. While this is definitely an issue, I wanted to focus on the CCVL today, because it really drives home the previous point. America still does not have any sort of proper light tank at top tier, or really even past the Walker Bulldog. There are light tanks, quote-unquote, but they function more like niche support vehicles or fire support. Nowhere is there a traditional light tank armed with a high-velocity cannon that shoots APFSDS rounds. Both Germany and Russia have traditional light tanks in the TAM series and Spret series. Even Britain has their VFM-5. A few months ago, the CCVL was data mined in the files, and I thought it would be an opportunity for me to finally acquire a proper light tank since I missed out on the XM8. It would be an understatement to say that I was disappointed when I find out that it would be an event reward, which means that I'll have to drop $60 on it since there's no way I'm grinding it out. But it's the only way I can have a light tank at top tier. That's not the biggest problem though. Even if these tanks were in the tech tree, the real problem is that Gaijin continually shafts them in the firepower department. There are 3 light tanks for America, the AGS, the XM8, and now the CCVL. All of these sit between 9.3 and 10.0. None of them have anything special for their class, just Generation 1 thermals and a decent autoloader. They're mobile, but not absurdly so, and have no gimmicks like an APS system or missiles. But for some reason, Gaijin has seen fit to give them the worst rounds imaginable. Both the AGS and XM8 have C76A1 as their top round, a tungsten export round with barely 350mm of penetration. Only recently was the CCVL given M833, but that came at the cost of a 0.3 BR increase. M833 barely hits in 400mm of penetration. To say this is a problem undersells how bad this is. To demonstrate, let's look at some other tanks. More accurately, let's look at some equivalent rounds. DM33 is a common round for non-US 105mm guns. It sits just above 400mm of penetration. Yet this round is commonly found on tanks as low as the TAM-2C at 9.7, VFM-5 at 9.3, or even the Leopard 1A5 or Centauro at 9.0. Russia gets the 3BM42 at 9.3, and 3BM46 at 10.0, the same BRs and who also have autoloaders. These rounds get 460 and 530mm of penetration respectively on the exact same style of tank. Worst of all is within the US tree itself. The M1128 gets M900, a DU round with 520mm of penetration, at 9.7. To say this is balanced would be a joke, but there's one more punchline. The CCVL is a predecessor to the XM8, meaning that the prototype somehow has access to a more advanced round than the near-final production model. The reasoning for these decisions is absurd. That they were prototypes or used before rounds went into service might hold weight on paper if this game were truly historical, but time and again changes have been made for game balance, and it would be better if more were. These guns all take the same ammunition. Every late American 105mm gun can use any ammunition type developed for it. That's called standardization. They weren't used in service, but if they were, they would have not been using export ammunition. They'd have received the same advanced rounds as they remained in service. So how can this be fixed? It's easy, really. Just give the tanks good rounds without increasing their BR. I'll even provide an easy list of changes. The XM8 moves up to 9.7. It receives M735 and M900. It would have been accepted into service as the M8 AGS and used military-grade ammunition, which those two shells are. The CCVL, on the other hand, moves down to 9.3, being the prototype model, and only gets M735 and M833. That's about on par with other nations. Now let's finally look at the TCM AGS. The odd child of the group, this vehicle can move up to 10.0, but its C76 round is swapped for M900. We can swap the M735 for M7742. And while we're at it, we'll swap the M1128 C76 for M774 as well, since there's no reason the Army would use this round. You can even look it up on General Dynamics' website to purchase. These vehicles would still be light, have poor survivability, but most importantly, be on par with other light tanks of their BR. They won't compromise firepower, forcing players to hide and ambush tanks. It's shameful that American light tanks are forced to play like they are, but given the rounds they have, there's really no other option. Do everyone a favor, Gaijin, and give them some decent rounds. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for future War Thunder content.